Hey there, I'm Annie Dickerson, and on today's show, we have the pleasure of having one of my good friends, David Gunderman, on the show. David is a real estate agent here in the Bay Area. He's also an investor, and he's the co-founder of the Gunderman Group, which is a very well-known real estate group here in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, I've known David for a number of years, and he's always, how sometimes you meet those people and they just have this spark about them, this energy, this kindness, this compassion that draws you into them. Well, David is one of those people. He's authentic from the get-go. He is who he is, and he's just such a warm, compassionate person. And in this episode, he talks about his amazing story of how he went from theater into almost law school, but then to a career on Broadway. And by happenstance, he moved out here to the Bay Area and got into real estate, kind of kicking and screaming, which is how I got into real estate. But has really found his calling through it. And it's something that has brought together all of his passions in a variety of different areas. And, right now, as we are embarking on another new year, it is a great time to really focus in on your values, who you are, who you've been, who you want to be. And David talks a lot about that in this conversation because he's a values-driven person, and his business is also very driven by his values and who he is and who his team is and how they serve their clients and their community. And so as you listen, start to think about, your journey, your own journey, and how you got to where you are today, because wherever you are right now, and however you happen to find this episode, it's meant to be that you're listening to this right now. I guarantee you there's important threads and important messages in this conversation for you at wherever you are in your journey. So I invite you to reflect on your own journey as you listen to David talk about his journey, and think about how you got to where you are. What are those, not just those things on your resume that you're listing, like you did this or you've accomplished this, you got this promotion, but think about really what brought you from one thing to another, whether it's career-wise, family-wise, friends, hobbies, anything. But what are those common threads that pulled you through from one thing to another? Because I think that those things are the gold nuggets that show us who we truly are, that shine a light on why we're here and what we're here to do. And so reflect on those things, especially at a pivotal time like this, where we are embarking on a new year, a new start, new beginnings, new hope, hopefully some optimism for the year ahead. And so with that, before we dive into our conversation today, community has always been a big part of who we are here at Goodegg Investments. And I know it's a very important thing to David as well, because he's built a very deep and meaningful community here in the Bay Area through his clients and his team. And it's the same with us and our investors. And in the show, I talk about how, often our investors have never met us in person, and yet they know us and we know them. And it's through the power of community. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I want to be part of a community of people looking to build wealth, people who are passionate about real estate investing, whether you are just at the beginning or you're a seasoned investor, we welcome you to join what we call our Goodegg Investor Club. And through it, we'll be able to share opportunities with you to build your own wealth, share information and resources so that you can educate yourself and become confident and comfortable investing in real estate if it aligns with your goals, and meet other investors as well who are on the same path. So to do that, just go to goodegginvestments.com/invest. All right, with that, let's dive into my conversation with David Gunderman. David, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Hi, Annie. How are
Oh my
you?
goodness. I am so excited to have you on the show because we've known each other for quite a while, and I've heard pieces of your story here and there, but we've never sat down to really dig in. And so I'm excited to get to ask you all the questions and to share your very unique story with the listener today. So first off, let me just ask, because some people grow up, and I have friends who all their lives they knew they wanted to be a doctor. And so they went down that path and now they're a doctor. Some people all their lives they knew they wanted to be in real estate and now they're in real estate. But I don't think you had that kind of story. You had a very different path that you had wanted for your life or projected for your life. And somehow real estate came to be part of your path. So take us along that story. Share with us, how did you get into real estate?
I think it's fairly common for people in real estate to not have thought they were going to be in real estate. I think it's a lot of people who end up there for various reasons. And no, I did not expect to be here. And I want to say, of our 23-person team and all the real estate we sell, we're closing in on $3 billion of sales. A lot of our
Wow.
people have a similar story to what mine is, which is unusual. A lot of us were creatives. I grew up in suburban Los Angeles and was a total theater kid. Um, it was just my focus. I was a total theater geek. Went to a high
I'm
school.
curious, how did you even get into theater in the first place? Were you like very like you like to sing and dance and perform as even a little tiny kid? Or like where along the path did you get into theater or even know that theater was a thing?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think we're all sort of, pre-wired to certain things. And
Mm,
I'll just say that at some point in my formative years, I want to say around fourth grade, I
okay.
met a group of friends or just a small group of friends, two guys in particular who um, just were. Um, they just explored their creativity, and we did it together, and we had silly little skits we did, and just things that just got us going. And it became this sort of hybrid of both creativity and a social anchor. I think
Mm,
growing up, we're all sort of looking for our people and something that grounds us in who we are or helps us self-actualize. And theater for me, I think for a lot of young people, when um, when kept in its sort of purest, most creative, most sort of abandoned form, also kind of becomes a bit of a therapy world for people. You're doing a lot of trust exercises, you're sharing things, you're being vulnerable, you're exploring emotions. So it for me, and I think for a lot of other people, it sort of took a deeper anchor in your life in those formative years of both this great creative outlet. It becomes this sort of social circle, and it also has a lot of sort of emotional work involved in it, which,
mm,
obviously that could go in a bad direction too. But fortunately, mine was all very, very pure. It was all very wonderful. It became magical. And, we all have our struggles. And my struggles, I think, sort of classic theater struggles. I hope I don't sound like a horrible stereotype, but a lot of my struggles had to do with the fact that I was gay, and that's a hard thing to grow up actualizing around. And theater was a safer place for that. I don't want to say
mm.
it was a safe place for it, because it was still back in the 80s. It was still not safe. And when I went to UCLA to study theater, there were hundreds of people in that theater department. Almost none of the men were gay. Within 4 or 5 years of leaving that program, almost all of them were gay. It still wasn't a totally safe space back in the
Yeah.
1980s. But probably more than anything, it was just a place to really explore,
Mm,
be free, to feel abandoned,
yeah.
to feel safe.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever really connected those dots, that theater has sort of it's almost serves as a therapy for people, like you said, because, it gives you a safe space to explore those emotions because you get to play somebody else. You get to
Yeah.
experience those emotions as another character and really build around their emotions, but try them on for size and experience them for yourself.
I
Um,
used to joke, I sometimes still joke that, like, people sometimes reflect back on their high school or college experiences, and the sort of lore of them can be, we were drinking so much beer or smoking pot or something like that. My group of friends, like, our Friday nights were like maybe a wine cooler and a night of freeze improvs in someone's living room. Like, we literally just get together and geek out and, like, do improvs together. And so I don't have a lot to relate to. A lot of other people relating to like their party years. Ours were just really innocent, but also, again, it created this exploration of what it is to be human and to feel things and to laugh and feel. And it was extraordinary. And I think, like so many artistic endeavors, so many endeavors just in general, but it becomes a bit of it becomes so deep in you. It becomes like identity. It's such an identity thing. Which is further down the road in this conversation. But, I've seen that happen to so many people who are in arts, or there's someone in our group who's so deep into sports. When you sort of have this passion as a young person and it consumes you, and it isn't something that's going to carry you through life, there's a period of time when you have to sort of, detach from it. And it's a painful grieving process because it's such a deep part of your identity at that point.
Of course, I can
We see
imagine.
that a lot in our work too, just to sort of pull that point
Mm,
out, which is our work is so deeply therapeutic in real estate sales and helping people transition between different parts of their lives. Is a lot of times people are moving from one identity to another identity. It could be a
mm,
divorce, it could be the loss of a parent, it could be a job change, but there's a lot of roiling transition in their lives. And I think that understanding or being able to empathize with that moment in their lives and being able to sort of care for it is a big part of
mm.
it too.
Well, dig into that transition period for you for a moment. How did you know that theater wasn't going to care? Did something happen where you were like, oh, actually, this isn't my path? Or how did you know that theater wasn't going to be the thing for you?
Well, it was a lot. I mean, so I'll go back and capture the journey a little bit more, which is that I graduated high school. I went to UCLA for theater, as that was I was a totally um, I was a studios person. I got a BA from UCLA. I graduated summa cum laude, and I was just not feeling fully comfortable with the idea of the insecurity of the business. That was really sort of eating away at me. And so I had made a half-baked decision to go to law school. I was going to say, oh, that was fun.
Oh,
I'm going to go to law
yeah.
school and take a safer path.
Wait. Out of all the things that you could have chosen,
Yeah,
law school seems like so far away from a BA in theater. How did you happen to choose that?
well, we're all these. I'm glad I didn't. By the way, I think I would
Yeah.
have been not a happy lawyer. I think I might have been an effective one. But why that? I was just to get more just into my own psychology. I mean, growing up in Los Angeles for me felt like a very materialistic place. We were a very suburban, middle class family. I think I was really worried about money and my ability to
Mhm,
make money, and also I think there was also a fear of. At that point, I didn't really come out until I was, a good chunk into my 20s. I think I was just sort of pursuing a path of expectation. And I think one of the things that resonated with me about the law was just I'm a justice guy. I just really love justice, and that's why I think I would have been really unhappy in the law, because the law is not always about, as we all know, is not always about justice. And I think I
that's
think
true.
that would have really eaten me alive. So
Mm,
so I'm glad I didn't pursue it. But I think also just taking the LSAT as you're sort of dabbling with it, it was all these logic games.
mhm,
And LSAT I just crushed because there's something about those conversations or those problem solving techniques that just really resonate with my brain. So
mm,
there were just little messages that said this might be a good path for you in terms of you being able to make money and satisfy your ambition, and there were little signals that this might work out. And also, law school doesn't mean you're going to become a lawyer. Like, it just felt like it was just
right.
a subject matter that I would find interest in.
Yeah. Well, speaking of money, what did you learn about money growing up? Did you have like tell us about that? Did you have an allowance? Were you a saver? Did you spend money on a lot of things? Like
I grew up, my dad was born in 1929, and I think that I grew up in a classic sort of
mm,
family that was post-depression. So I think money
mhm,
was something we really feared, and I think that message got
mm,
into me. Um, so money was there was money, but it was a little scarce. And uh, my dad was the classic stable. He was a Navy officer, worked in the Merchant Marines. He ended up working in the aerospace industry as an engineer. He worked for Hughes Aircraft for those 35 solid years, commuting an hour and a half each way each day. working his way up the management ladder and providing for his family. I remember also my mom at one point, and she was an interesting sort, and I won't go deep into that, but she just tried all kinds of things. She was always restless and unhappy and trying to find her path. And one of the things she did that my father credited her with really saving our family financially was she at one point helmed the purchase of a 6-unit apartment building in Van Nuys, and just sort of
Oh.
getting in there, cleaning up the units, trying to raise the rents a little bit. And that meant that we as a family were over there. The one unit got rented. It was there. That person left. They sort of trashed the place. We'd have to go in and just roll up our sleeves all weekend and just, pull out the stove and just get all the grime out from behind it.
Mhm.
We all sort of were involved in this project of trying to make a little more money for our family. And they did a few of those, no major home runs, but little base hits. And apparently it supplemented our income in a way that was more meaningful than I fully understood at the time.
Hmm. Did you
Well,
know that like, how old were you around this time?
oh, I was probably about 13, 14.
Okay. Were you like, "Ah, I don't wanna spend my weekend doing this," or did you have some understanding that this contributed to your family's income in some way?
I think it was both. I didn't really want to do it, but I didn't
Yeah.
feel like there was a lot of choice there. And I'm also just a
Yeah.
pleaser. So I was not one who
Mm,
was going to rebel or kick up too much fuss, but I just remember being really unhappy while doing it. It was really
mm.
hard to do. There were
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
still associate smells with the experience. Like as you
Yeah.
even take me back to I'm smelling things right now
Uh-huh. Yeah. I can imagine.
that I don't want to describe.
Right, I'm sure. But yeah, they say those smells are the sign of a good real estate deal,
Oh,
when you
yeah,
can
right.
look past that, but, oh, anyway, okay, so you had sort of a, because when I was growing up, my parents never invested in real estate. They didn't buy a house, they didn't invest in real estate, they didn't know the first thing about it. But it sounds like your mom, at least experimented with it, and, for better or worse, you got sort of a front row seat into a little bit of what that was about.
Yeah.
Um, and did that scare you? Were you like, I'm never gonna do that in my life. I'm never gonna buy a piece of real estate and rent it out. This is the worst.
I wasn't thinking that deeply about it. I think my
Okay.
focus again was sort of in another place, and so I
Yeah.
was I was being a good soldier with the family business,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then but it wasn't anything that was capturing my imagination
Yeah.
or leaving me any. I mean, I guess if anything, relative to this conversation, it did. My dad's um, respect for what she did and the impact it had is probably the biggest takeaway I had from it. Is that
Hmm.
that was a means where she was able to do something that the breadwinner of the family um, gave her proper due for, and
Oh,
that for me meant that real estate investment she made was meaningful, uh,
yeah.
and
That's a really
it's a seed that real estate can have an impact on people's lives.
yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that because actually that's part of the reason we started our business
Mm,
was to help women and moms to get into real estate
mhm,
because a lot of them, don't see real estate investing as something that they can do.
mhm,
And so once they dip their toes in, they see, "Oh, wow, I can," for a stay-at-home mom to be
mm,
able to contribute financially to her family in a
mhm,
meaningful way, or for a mom who's working full-time to say, I'm gonna supplement the family's income, and then I'm gonna go to part-time so I can spend more time with the kids. To have that flexibility and just a different avenue to create a stream of income for the family can be something that's really impactful.
of course, and there's so many barriers to people feeling for either doing it or feeling comfortable doing it or getting educated about it or feeling there's just so many barriers that have been, it's just barriers. Institutional. I don't know if they're institutional or what the exact adjective is, but I'm just so glad that what you're doing in terms of what your mission is. Um, I see one things that makes me sort. I'm going to get you know me, Annie. I can't help but get a little political, but I see So, I mean, I guess this isn't at all controversial or surprising, but I just see so in my work, I see so many um, deg marginalized groups, and there's so many degrees of which group we're talking about and what their life experience is. But I see marginalized groups just not getting the benefits of real estate, and that's
Mm,
painful. And it's so gratifying for us when we can help. No one can predict the future, which is always so. You don't want to be so arrogant to always assume that you know what's best for someone, and that something's going to work out well for them. But for the most part, it does, and and you hope that the past is a reflection of where the future is, and it's just so gratifying when you can help somebody who just couldn't get ahead,
mhm.
find their path and start to get ahead, and it's it just that it's so meaningful and gratifying in a grand scale when you can look back 10 and 20 years and see that the impact it did have. Like you
Yes.
encourage them to try, and when you even
Mhm.
check in or they check in or you run into them and they say like that changed my life.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's
I
everything.
know. I'm totally on the same page, and that's why we're such big advocates of education and just getting the word out there about how all this works so that people can gain the confidence to try it for themselves. I
Yeah.
think about, my mom. Since I learned about real estate investing, I
Mhm.
she and my dad, their whole lives, they just saved up cash. That's all they knew.
Mhm.
My dad bought some stamps at one point. He was convinced that the stamp collection would be like the ticket,
The
but no,
windfall.
that didn't go anywhere. And they barely invested in the stock market, maybe just a couple $1,000s, and never bought a house. And so when I learned about this real estate investing stuff, I said, "Mom, I'm going to help you invest some of your money."
Yeah.
And little by little, she's been growing that little pile of money, and it's such a relief, not only to her but also to me, that
Mhm.
for the rest of her life, her money's not going to go down; it's going to go up.
Mhm.
As most people are so worried that they're going to outlive their money, outlive their
Mhm.
savings,
Mhm.
and through this vehicle, it's like she's able to create this engine to continue to create wealth, which has changed her life, changed mine too.
The other thing that's on my mind investment wise, I'm not a savvy investor and I'm a fearful investor. I've always been a fearful investor. I just don't know who to trust and where to turn.
Yeah.
And there's things that in my marriage with Andrew, like there's just things that you as a partner, you decide what you are and are not willing to put up with. And Andrew's a little older than I am, and in some ways wiser than I am. And one of the things that frustrated me, I mean, historically, we could have made a lot more money in certain ways, in so much as Andrew made it very clear that he did not want to be a landlord, and
Mhm.
that I get it. That's a hard thing, especially when
Yeah.
you're raising kids and you're running a business, and like even with the project manager, there's just things that happen, and so we made a decision, me reluctantly, but he was very strong about it. I don't want to be a landlord, so and I of course like Van Nuys, a 6-unit apartment building
Yeah.
flat in my head, and I was like, okay, I can not be a landlord.
Yep, I get it.
But there was money to be made there that we didn't make. Um, but
Sure.
but but the thing that's also just sort of on my mind psychologically is I think of like my generation of friends. A lot of our parents who even had these really stable jobs. I think about one friend whose father was a doctor in Michigan, and right as he hit his retirement years, like that stock event happened, like that market
Mm,
plunge happened, and so much of that nest egg was suddenly wiped out.
yeah.
And it just chills me to the bone to think of so many people whose 401ks and everything are just in one place. And
Mhm.
and yet I think again there are these barriers to understanding like how can I get my money spread out into different types of vehicles so that there's more of a hedge. And that's another reason why I'm grateful for what you and others like you are doing, which is just to provide access to people to this sort of diversification of their life savings, because
Mhm.
you can't have it all in one place.
You can't. It's a scary thing out there, especially with all that's changing. You gotta hedge a little bit, and it's hard sometimes because like you work a busy job, and then at night and on the weekend you want to relax. You don't want to have to dig and read, read things that you don't understand to try to put your money in a place that makes you fearful and nervous. And so I totally get it. It's, you get on the train and the momentum just takes you, that 401k momentum just
Yeah.
takes you to retirement, and you just stop thinking about it. And you're like, oh, this must be good enough.
Right.
Um,
Well, then
but
the next barrier is, who do you trust?
right. Right. Yeah.
And that's a
The,
scary thing. Who do I trust?
yeah.
And I'm curious to know from, I know this is you asking me questions, but like, how do you imbue
Yeah.
trust in your clients? Like, how do they know that they can trust you? Like, that's got to be a difficult thing. Like, this is a big leap of faith for them. How does
Yeah.
that work out?
Yeah.
Not,
And
not,
it's a,
or you want to just
right.
edit out me asking you
No,
a question?
no, this is great. This is great. I love it's a conversation. So it goes both ways. Um, no, it's a really interesting thing because, well, my husband well, and you guys are both in residential real estate sales locally, right? You get to meet the person, you see them face to face, you
Yeah.
can go out for coffee with them, you tour the houses with them, you get to know them. And
Mhm.
if anything goes wrong, they can come find you.
Yeah.
I mean, right? So there's that trust built in that they've met you face to face. Most of our investors have never met us.
Mm.
They've Googled us or found us online.
Word
And
of
then
mouth, I would imagine, is big.
yeah, word of mouth is better because then there's the trust of the person who referred
Right.
them to us.
Right. Of
So
course.
that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
There are people who Google how to invest in real estate and they find something that we've written or a podcast like this that we've done or a video that we've created, and they just start to listen or they start to read, and then they go into the rabbit hole and they say, okay,
Mm.
what else? What does this term mean? And they keep going, and then eventually they build enough of their own confidence and understanding that they say, you know what, I think this makes sense for me,
Mm.
and I think I understand it enough to try it out. Maybe not with, all of my savings, but, a small
Yeah.
piece of it,
First.
just
Yeah.
as a proof of concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm astounded every time we get kind of a stranger from the internet who
Yeah.
says, hey, I've read all your stuff. I've listened to all your stuff. I really love what you're doing. I want to give it a try. And they
Yeah.
wire us 25K, 50K.
Mhm.
And it's a big responsibility for us. And we never take that lightly because
Yeah.
that's somebody's very hard earned money
Right.
that, most of these are families. And so we try our hardest to take very good care of them and their money. But yeah, it's not always easy. And we've personally invested in some, I'll call them some bad eggs out there that we thought we trusted. And it's hard. It's hard because you get to know somebody, you think that you've done all your due diligence and there's other people who trust them, and so you put your money with them, and for one reason or another, either intentional or unintentional, it doesn't go according to plan. But
Yeah.
I always say that's part of the tuition.
Yeah.
For anything, you go to school, you learn to become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. You paid many years of tuition to learn to do that thing. Well, investing is kind of the same way. Sometimes you you hit a home run on the first try, but other times, it's a base hit, or God forbid, it's a strikeout. But
Mm.
you learn something from that, and you
Mhm.
pay some tuition along the way, but that gets you to the next place where next
Mhm.
time a little bit better the questions to ask.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So take us back to law school because we're meandering along the path. So you decide, okay, you graduated, got a theater degree, and you're like, okay, this isn't practical money wise. I wanted something that's going to make me some more stable money. You
Yeah.
decided to take the LSAT. Did you actually apply for law school?
Just feel I'll zip through this real fast, but I was just applying to law schools when, while I was in college, I was working professionally in theater and doing some commercials and things in Los Angeles. And then, so I had all my union cards and all that. And then while I was filling out law school applications, I got cast in a Broadway show out of an LA audition. And I thought, well, this has been my dream. I got to go do this. And this will
Yeah.
get right. This will be differentiating on my law school applications in a year or two. So, so I fly to New York, and just my life changes. Like 10 years zip by. Like that show, I cast another Broadway show, and just I started to make I was a working actor for 10 years, and it was, I bought my other great real estate story for me is like, I was in some roommate situations I didn't love, and it was in the early 90s, and this opportunity came along to buy a studio apartment on the Upper West Side of New York for $49,000 that was all renovated. And so I didn't house. I borrowed $5,000 from my parents. Very lucky to have been able to do that. I paid it back very quickly, and bought this studio apartment, and with a $600 a month maintenance. So I sort of anchored my finances in this thing that I could afford. And even though I was working, 3 or 4 regional theater jobs in one year or another, and pulling in an income of, $24,000 a year living in New York City, I could get by. And I wasn't having to sort of run around or take on too many not take on jobs I didn't want to do in between, because I had this sort of financial base. And that was completely affordable, and gave me the life I wanted. So again, freedom from real estate in that moment, and taking advantage of a down market. And so that was awesome. And I could have kept doing that forever. You asked earlier, like, how did you know to get out or to move? And the hard thing about theater is, I got to do some great things. Like I did a ton of shows, and I started a theater company upstate New York with a bunch of friends. And I have a dear friend, childhood friend, who's a big Broadway producer. And when I wasn't working, I was running around being an errand person for him. Or he and I were also very much caught up in the days of ACT UP, and in the world of AIDS activism and LGBTQ activism. So we were putting on, we were involved in civil disobedience and things like that. And he was such a producer. Our civil disobedience was, it was just a hot time politically for the LGBTQ community. And we'd be stopping traffic on Fifth Avenue, and we'd have, Susan Sarandon there, and, and helping her get arrested, and, just producing political events. And under him, I was just hanging out with him, but he was also, that relationship informed so much of who I am also as a person, or just nurtured who I was as a person. He was the first person to produce Hedwig and the Angry Inch in its most raw forms, and eventually produced it on Broadway, and that's where he won his Tony Award, which was just this radical piece back in the day. And just to be in the midst of that was extraordinary. And seeing what he was doing, and seeing this theater piece that even I couldn't understand, he was able to see it, and that's his genius. But he even said to me at one point, like, I'm watching John Cameron Mitchell, crack eggs on his chest and smear makeup and scream and shout, and I thought, oh, that's not my cup of tea, but wow. and my friend David, who was a producer, said to me at one point, like, should I get the film rights for this? And I was like, oh, David, this is never going to be a movie. And, of course it was. And I'm wrong about all of it. But anyway, it was a rich and wonderful time. And I have so many good stories from it. I won't go into them, but there came a point where, for me as a I don't know, Enneagram 3 or ambitious person, it was wearing me down this sort of trajectory of A doesn't lead to B to C to D to E. And it just, theater is always like A, B, C, D, back to A, B, C, D, E, back to A. And for me, that wore on me. Also, I was just like, I want a dog. I can't have a dog and like be working in Cincinnati and then in Dallas. And then, so I was going into my 30s, and that voice of like, I need more stability in my life was reemerging. And I was fortunate to have been on a national tour of a Broadway show. And while I was in the Bay Area, I met my husband, Andrew. And that was an extraordinary life change, because it was just a deep connection, and led to a year and a half of long distance relationship, and a point where I said to him, he was going to move to New York and stay in my studio apartment. And I said, well, why don't I move out to the Bay Area for a month? You have a bedroom apartment, and we'll just, see how that goes. And I just never went back. But that
Wow.
was the beginning of like that grief process of like,
Yeah.
who am I in this new environment? And I did theater around San Francisco, but it wasn't particularly satisfying. And
Mm.
ended up working at a magazine called The Industry Standard for about a year and a half, which covered the internet economy. And that imploded when the first dot bust happened in the year 2000. And in the 5 years since the day I met Andrew, we had a year and a half relationship. I moved out. We bought I sold that apartment in New York. It gave us a down payment to buy a modest house in Alameda. I had gone through job transfers and we were adopting 2 kids out of the foster care
Mm.
system. Like in a 5-year thing, like every bit of our lives changed. But what happened near the end of that 5-year period was everyone at the magazine was late. The magazine folded, and there were just no marketing jobs or jobs anywhere to be found that were particularly interesting. And so I held my nose and went into real estate because as a complete default, like, and if you had told, getting to your first question, if you told my 25 or 15-year-old self I was
Yeah.
a real estate agent, I would have thrown myself off the nearest building in
Yeah.
absolute, because I thought it was a sales job and I wanted nothing to do with
Mm.
it. I was doing it simply because my real estate agent was a totally nice guy, and I thought, well, that was he was not some solicitous predatory, monster. So maybe I can do
Yeah.
this for a minute while I'm waiting for a marketing coordinator job to show up.
Yeah. Right.
And it turned into this incredible career that I did not see coming. Um,
Yeah.
and small business and
Wow.
and changing people's lives and partnering with my husband
Yeah.
and creating a 23-person team based on values and connection between us all. And it's been the best, most unexpected ride I could have ever imagined.
I can't I mean, to see you on this side of it and all the success that you've garnered. I mean, I don't think there's a homeowner in the East Bay in the Bay Area who doesn't know the Gunderman Group. Everybody knows the Gunderman Group. And your signs are everywhere. You're well renowned for your quality in not only the homes that you put on the market, but the service that you provide people. And I
Mm.
think you're so well known for that. And I'm an Enneagram 3 too, by the way.
I know you
And I
are. We
totally
know each
get it.
other.
Like this, yeah, this whole like wanting to create and build and achieve and have an impact. And it's just, I mean, it's so funny. Our stories kind of mirror each other in similar ways because I also went kicking and screaming into real estate. I was
Mhm.
like, well, my husband went into real estate. I can't go into real estate too. That would be
Mhm.
ridiculous. And here we both are. And I want to ask you this because I think looking in from the outside, a lot of people like you and I have a certain perception of what real estate is. They have this notion. It's almost like used car salesman, right? Like the pushy, like sleazy, untrustworthy person who just wants to sell you on something. But you've created this values-based business, this beautiful business, and there's creativity in that, there's love in that, there's nurturing in that. Tell us
Mm.
a little bit about that journey.
Well, it just comes from. Thank you for all that. That's so nice of you to say. And I think there's plenty of people in the East Bay who don't know who we are. But I love the idea that they all know who we are.
Yes.
More know about us than I ever expected to, and that feels really good.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope I'm answering your question, but and this is a moment too. I want to say, like, we're just post 2024 election, and everything is so raw right now, and it's actually and we're doing some team restructuring, and it's just pushed me into this sort of zone of reflecting on who we are and how we got here, and really like what's our genesis? Who are we? We're 25 years in. Like, what is it that matters? And as we sort of move towards whatever this next chapter is, or is there a legacy, and does it push forward? Like, you have these moments when you sort of have to go back and go back to your mission, go back to your values, and we've been on that. And I just feel like we as a country are in that moment too, where like if you look at the sort of values of democracy, they're just really challenged right now. I find that's my point of view on it, and it's just a time to really get back into like who are you and how you're going to show up in the world, because I think as again a justice person and an Enneagram 3 or whatever, all these sort of, and a pleaser, I just have to
Mhm.
really I have to get really I have to reinvest in my values right now. And that is how our team operates. Is like, I love that it's a group of people that have these mostly creative backgrounds. And we just, there's so many values that I could go into, but like what I'm learning, because as you grow and scale, you can start to lose your core value structure. It can start to get too far away from you because you're doing too much. And the last few months I've been like, no, let's get back. Like, let's get back to who we are as people and what started this whole thing. And that's been a process in the last couple of months. And it's now coming to a point where it's getting really, really, in my mind, sharp again. And now I'm really excited to go into the next iteration. But those values are include, I just think that almost like, if you're fortunate to have sort of a traditional family, traditional is such a weird word for me, but like you're no good to your partner unless you're good to yourself, and your partnership is not usually as healthy for your children unless that's health. Like there's these sort of ways that you ripple out. And for our team, I'm right now, I'm back in reinvesting in the fact that we have to really care for one another. Like when we get really busy, we sometimes get sloppy with one another, or we're not as grateful or kind or respectful as we need to be. So I'm trying to pull everyone back into like, whoa, let's get really kind and gentle and respectful again. Because there's just been a couple of moments of sloppiness among us, and it just starts to fracture. So get back to that gentle, loving kindness again. And then when we have that center, our clients feel it. And so, some of the values that tie us together are, we represent people and not price points. We're not, we don't segment. We're not just all high end, which I respect. Some people just want to market segment and be who they are, but like, that's just not who I am. I just love, again, changing a person's life. And actually some of the most gratifying deals we've ever done were not very lucrative. So, so that's a value that our team shares. We always know that we're advisors and not deciders. We're always deferential. We just kind of come in, not telling people what not being arrogant about what we believe we know. We know markets are dynamic, and the advice we can give, the market could shift, and so we have to be very humble about the advice we give, and just be really thoughtful and in terms of like understanding. I think the expertise we can bring is just giving them a broad understanding of all the sorts of every real estate transaction is baked into the future. So like what is the minefield in front of you, the potential minefield? Mind you, there could be probably a pot of gold for most people at the other end of it, but there's a minefield in front of us right now. There's a lot of places you can misstep, and just sort of getting all of us so sharply focused on like all the nuances of this terrain we have to cross to get where we want to go. And explaining to the client, no matter how sort of exhausting it can be, like all the nuances of this thing, instead of just being like, oh, I got this, like, come along, trust me. Just people feel so empowered when you're just giving them so much information as you go and giving them the power to control it, but always giving them, you don't want to be like, they resent it when you don't have an opinion. Like they're hiring you for your expertise and opinion, but your expertise needs to include optionality. And that option comes with opinions. And so that's something I think we really enjoy. I just really enjoy, and our group really enjoys being good at what we do, and also understanding. I know I'm going in a lot of different directions, but the other thing that I just love about it, and maybe this goes back to this whole theater thing, is I love understanding consumer behavior and consumer psychology and trends and likes, teeing properties up on the listing side that just sort of are unexpected or bold, or just garner more attention than the competitors do, because someone is less imaginative than we are and doesn't quite understand that putting everything into a beige story is not the best way to pull attention to a house, but like giving it a rich, dreamy, bold story actually creates more viewership and more action, and not everyone feels safe doing that. That's another thing I love about our team, is that we are really good at deconstructing all the experiences we've had, and just sort of understanding human nature. And what we do more than anything is we just sit around telling stories about this person and that person and this deal and that reaction, and just, what can we learn from this that can apply to the future? And when we find another house like this that needs another buyer like that, like what did we learn that made that bridged it successfully, and where did we misstep? And it's just fun. It's just fun, especially when you're in the room with people who spark you. And
Mm.
that's what's led to our success, is just creating a community of people who are values aligned, who are creatively bold in their choices, um, and have each other's back, and have the back of the clients as well. Like, we just never, ever, ever sell anything. That's not our jobs. We are not salespeople. We're advocates. We are strategists. We're negotiators. I've never sold anything in 25 years of doing real estate.
Yeah. Love that. And if I could pull the thread through, I mean, thinking all the way back to the top of the conversation where you said,
Yeah.
when you got into theater, it was like you found this group of guys and you really connected. You were just doing, fun little things.
Yeah.
But it was that connection, that human to human connection that
Mhm.
really brought you together. And it seems throughout your story, whether it was on Broadway or even thinking about applying to law school and the justice that you were bringing to people, to moving out to the Bay Area and through the gay rights movement, through now what you do with your team and empowering them to empower their clients. It's been this human to human connection this whole time of you just wanting to have that impact with other people, to create that experience for somebody that lights them up, that changes something in their life. And it almost doesn't matter what you do. It's there's another I've gotten into a little bit of human design, and I was
Hmm.
my type is a manifester, and manifestors are always concerned about having an impact. My whole life I was like, I'm not
Hmm.
having a big enough impact. I'm not having a big enough impact. I got to keep going from here to there to there. And I heard recently somebody say, as a manifester, you don't have to have impact because you are the impact.
Hmm.
And I think that's so true for you and your story, is that all along, all these things that you've done, you have been that light for people. And it's very clear as you tell the story that you were never out to make a big pile of money. You were never out to really make a name for yourself. You just wanted to have that connection with people. And it's no surprise to me, with that as your anchor, all the success that you've had and all the people that you attract to you, because they want to be part of that light.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you. I'm just, um, also, I just really love collaboration. Like, the theater things I always enjoyed
Yeah.
were these sort of like collaborative pieces, or where everybody's getting a voice, and like, it's not just like some dictatorial person telling you where to stand, but we're all sort of like throwing out ideas, and one idea sparks another idea, and something starts to evolve. So that's another value of our team, is although I'm sort of the leader of it, my husband and I are the leaders of it. Like, I don't love hierarchies. I like us all to just be like a working ensemble,
Yeah.
and I that sort of, and for me, that's another lesson, is a life lesson, is that I sort of have my, especially right now, my concerns about just broad capitalism. I don't really love just I feel like capitalism is run amok. I mean, I really love
Mhm.
capitalism. Is a wonderful thing in so many ways, and the freedoms it creates, but it just can't be for me, it can't be the altar at which we all kneel. Like, I just think that capitalism that serves, I guess I'm a social democrat. Like, I just want the money we make to serve the collective, not the individual. And or at least keep in mind, I just think that we've sort of lost our way with CEO being crazy. Like, my dad's generation, like, it was easier to get by. Companies took care of their employees in ways that we don't do anymore, and just sort of that ethos of, like, caring for one another has broken down a lot. And I want our business, to reflect the value that we feel, which is that we care for one another,
Yeah.
and that's and we care for these clients. We care for them. That we put their interests above anything that's financial, and that is what makes this everything.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
was just a job trying to collect a check, like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
so meaningless.
Yeah.
And I see people sort of in my industry, afraid to be themselves, or afraid to be, just I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to be too much of one thing. People won't want me if I'm too big in this direction. And I've always been sort of, outspoken and political. And I just think it helps you find your people. People so deeply want
Yeah.
authenticity or someone to stand
Mhm.
for something. And I think
Yes.
when you sort of stick your neck out a little bit more, in my experience, that has more impact.
Yeah. I recently just read that humans are the only species that have the capacity to be inauthentic to ourselves. Isn't that funny? Like a
Um,
deer is a deer, a lion is a lion. That's just their nature. But a human, we do
right.
all sorts of things to not be who we are, to
Isn't that
please
crazy?
people, to
Yeah.
do what other people expect, and to not be ourselves. Isn't
Yeah.
it
I
fascinating?
think
Yeah.
when you say that, I immediately think of my pets, and they are so whoever they are, whatever they are.
Yeah. Yeah. They're unapologetic, right?
Their personalities are
Yeah.
just out there on full
That's right.
display, unchanging.
That's right. That's right. Oh, well, David, I mean, you have just such a phenomenal story. And like I said, you're such a shining light for people. And it's so inspirational to watch you, especially at a time like this, to continue to double down and really center yourself and your team and your clients and your community on those values. And so, with that, David, we're going to move into the last part of our show, the Life and Money Show Spotlight Round. We're going to ask you 3 questions we ask all our guests. You ready?
Right? I don't know what they are. Okay, I might have to hesitate.
Awesome.
Go for it.
This is the best. All right. The first question is about your life and money. So, share with us one thing you're doing to live a meaningful and intentional life by design.
One thing I'm doing, to say it again,
To live a meaningful, intentional life by design. So something that you're living your best life. What's one thing that you're doing to live your best life?
mm, I think, are you financially or in any category?
Any sense.
Oh, what this moment, I've already said it, but what this moment requires of me, this moment, I'm sort of, this is such a fraught moment. I'm sort of stuck in it
Yeah.
right now, because it's funny when we set up this appointment, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, by the time I do this, the election will be
Yeah.
over. What will I
Right.
feel like? And then here I am.
Right. Yeah. Here you are.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah. It's for me again, it's just I'm having this deeply reflective moment of getting into values. I'm sorry to repeat
Yeah.
myself, but that's what's going on right
No.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard from more than one source that we are at a time of this massive rising in the collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Massive, just lightning fast, faster than we've ever experienced before.
Yeah.
And what it requires is intense polarity. And the
Yeah.
reason for that is because when there's intense polarity, if things are just like good, like think about your health, right? Like if you're feeling good, it's not going to motivate you to make any changes. You're like, I'm good as I am. But
Yeah.
when things start really getting rocky,
Yeah.
that's when you make changes. And
Yeah.
so this polarity that we're experiencing right now is required in order for us to then catapult into that next level of consciousness, which is why we're seeing, in this darkness, people like yourself really doubling down and saying, you know what? I'm going to pay that no mind. I'm going to focus on what I can control and I'm going to be the light for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And I think we're already seeing so much of that. And I think we're going
Yeah.
to see more of that.
And I think the more of us that are engaged in our lives in that way, we're just going to find this intersectionality. We're going to find each other. And that's how it's going to get
Yes,
richer and deeper and ripple out further and further and further. Like we all have to just find each other and find that intersectionality with each other and create a world that we all want to be a part of.
absolutely. All right. Second question is about others' life and money. So, share with us a life or money hack. And by hack, we mean loosely a tool, a tip, a resource, a book, anything that has helped you on your journey that you think may help the listener as well.
Oh, the a hack. Um, I don't know if this is a hack, but for me, the most when you said book, it triggered something for me.
Mhm.
I've joined this book club that is all men, and I've been reading again. And the thing that's been
Mm,
really interesting to me is I've found some books recently that were just completely mind expanding in terms of understanding the world and the experiences of others. And as somebody who thinks of himself as being a deeply empathetic person, I've sort of discovered some of my own limitations around the experiences of others. And so I'd say that, like, one of the books that just really had a deep sort of life-changing impact on me is Kathy Park Hong, who wrote Minor Feelings, which
Mm,
deals with just sort of like so many of the themes of what I've been reading lately have been in sort of this sort of like generational trauma and institutional racism, things like that, which I think I know a lot about. But there are some voices that are teaching me that, like, oh, I've really just skimmed the surface of understanding what this experience can be like for others. So Minor Feelings is great. On Earth, on Earth, we're briefly gorgeous. Is a wonderful book by a Vietnamese queer author that is extraordinary, and a sort of intersection of prose and poetry. I'm just getting into reading, and my reading isn't taking me into investment places. It's taking me into deeper human connection.
yeah. 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 That tracks. That totally tracks. And that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's on my list, Minor Feelings, because I remember when you and
Uh,
Andrew told us about that. I know my husband is reading that now, and he's had profound insights from it. And so
yeah.
I'm excited to read it too.
Yeah.
All right. Final question is about life and money in the world. This one should be an easy one, I think, for you. What's one thing you're doing to help make the world a better place, however you interpret that question?
Oh, I'm. What am I doing to make the world a better place? I'm just staying in my lane of
Mm,
trying to have impact, but I'm also trying to do it in increasingly. I don't know if this makes any sense, but I'm just trying to do it. I think what I've been doing has been feeling fairly meaningful to me. What's interesting to me is that as we've sort of grown, we've had this temptation to sort of lose ourselves in the process of scaling. And what I'm excited to do is figure out how to scale and not lose ourselves, because then we're affecting more lives, but we're doing it in the same meaningful way we were able to do it in small ways. So I feel like I've been on a meaningful journey, career wise and money wise, and helping others, but I'm trying to do it now in ways that really sort of um, I'm in such a values place right now, but I just want to align with people who share values, and just, if we're going to scale this thing, that we're just doing it in an intentional way that just respects how we all sort of got here in the first place. And I think that's how we're going to broaden our impact.
hmm I couldn't agree more. I
And,
mean,
and I'm trying
yeah,
to do it. This maybe went to your first question, which I may have,
yeah.
but I'm doing it in ways that this is so, anyway, it's just that I'm trying also to stay uh, really grounded in terms of, like, making sure I swim through, get up at 5 in the morning. I'm swimming 3 days a week. I'm doing things. I'm hiking. I went to the Grand Canyon with my daughter, and we were off the grid for 2 weeks. And I've just brought back a stone, and I sit in my backyard and rub it and bring back the canyon in my mind. I'm just trying to stay very grounded in nature and this place and the wonder of the universe and all the things that we have around us, and people and energy and all these sorts of wonderful things. I'm just trying to not get so chaotic that I lose that, because I think it's such a wonderful sort of uh, vibrating force underneath us all that I often just ignore and forget is there. And I'm trying to really lens out from this moment we're in, and just see the beauty in this place and in the people who inhabit it, and hopefully that leaks into or seeps into everything else we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a beautiful foundation and anchor to everything that you're doing. And what a great example you're setting for your team and your clients too, that you're filling your own cup first and you're making sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you're seeing the beauty and the wonder and the curiosity and the playfulness so that you can then bring that into your team and your interactions so that they can then spill that energy out into the community. And that's how we have impact. I used to think that impact meant changing other people. Now I'm like, no, no, no. Impact starts here first with me taking care of myself and being that most authentic
Yeah.
version of myself. Then that spills out into everybody else.
Yeah, I love what you said about curiosity too. The more curious we are, the more we just
Yeah.
learn. Oh, it's so
Yes.
wonderful. 25 years into an industry and still being so
You're
curious about
still going. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yep.
I love it. Well, David, your energy is infectious and your story is so inspirational. I know that especially people here in the Bay Area, but even people who are, all over the country and all over the world listening may want to learn a little bit more about you and get in touch with you or your team. So tell us if they did want to follow up, what's the best place that they can go?
Oh, please reach out if that's true. Uh, Maybe the first order of business is thegundermangroup.com, thegundermangroup.com. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, at ampersand the Gunderman Group. My phone numbers and emails are in all those places, so I would love to hear from you.
Amazing. David Gunderman, real estate agent, investor, and co-founder of the Gunderman Group. David, this has been such a joy. Thank you so much for being here with us and our listeners today.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing.